Hey everyone, welcome back. This is session 3, option 1, the second video about learning plans. I'm Kendra.
I'm Lacy, and today we have a special guest. We have with us Courtney.
Hi there.
Courtney is a PL expert, and we've asked her to come in and teach us all a little something about learning progressions today.
We're excited to have her, so let's get started.
So on your screen, you see an example of a learning progression. So if you look there on the proficient level, you see as an example of something that we can all relate to, somebody riding a bike. We've all learned at one point how to ride a bike. And this person right here is riding the bike at a proficient level. So they're riding it independently, they've learned how, and they can do it all by themselves. If you go down one level to the developing level, they need either a little bit of help or maybe some training wheels. So that would be an example of just one step down from proficient. And if you go down even one more level to the emerging level, they really need, they're really just gaining a little bit of exposure at the emerging level. They're not independent at all. They're not even developing. They're sitting there on their tricycle being pushed along with direct hand-over-hand help from the parent or guardian behind them. And then all the way at the top, beyond the proficient level, is that advanced or deeper learning level. It's like a BMX biker, and not everybody's even expected to get to the advanced level, so I know not even all of us are at that advanced level for biking.
I certainly do not ride a BMX bike, no.
Me either.
Me neither. So learning progressions are a good example of kind of like a map of stepping stones that we can lay out for students. And students take those stepping stones to get to a learning goal. They might take that commonly traveled route that we lay out for them to reach that learning goal, but some take alternative routes. And either way, they're reaching that learning goal in a methodical way without skipping the essential steps.
Gotcha. That's a really great way of looking at this and understanding that the advanced level isn't really necessary when we're talking about the standards that kids are learning.
Yeah, it certainly isn't.
Great.
All right, let me just clarify, Courtney. So a learning progression is a tool that any student or teacher can use to break down any activity, whether it's an actual math standard or learning how to ride a bike or painting a Picasso-like picture. You can take any activity and break it down using one of these tools, right?
Definitely. It definitely helps with transparency.
So on this next slide that we're looking at now, you can see what Lacy just reiterated, that the standard level is that level 3. And Courtney talked about how the child was riding the bike at a proficient level. That's what we're talking about, the level 3, the standard level. When we look down a little bit lower, if we're down on level 1, that's that hand over hand. I think that's a great analogy for that they really do need a lot of support. And that's that child back on the tricycle who's getting pushed and has the little sunshade over them. That's the level 1. In a classroom, that level 1 looks like working with the teacher most often. If we look up one more level on the stepping stone analogy that Courtney used, we're learning those skills before the standard, and they're focusing on new vocabulary. So it's like the kid using training wheels, still having some help from their parents, but they're not quite at the standard level. And then just like she talked about with the BMX biker, the level 4 is above the standard or beyond the standard.
So Courtney, if a teacher and students were using these learning progressions in their classroom, how would a student get to level 3, which is the standard level?
So there's, I would definitely have to start with a pretest to figure out where my students were living on this learning progression. If I give them an aligned pre-assessment, I would know which group of students were living at level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4. And then if I have a group of students at level 1, I'll give them aligned work at level 1 so that they can, take those stepping stones up to level 2. And, the same for the level 2 students, give them the work that will walk them up to level 3. Does that answer your question a little bit?
I think it does. So let's go ahead and take a look at a more detailed one. And then you guys feel free to jump in and ask questions and help me get this clarified for our listeners. So on this slide, I took some time and I created a learning plan for myself. And I'm going to take a close look at the activities and the words on here, because that is the task that is associated with this second video. So first of all, notice that the proficient level is highlighted gray to stand out, because the standard that I selected was a kindergarten standard, that one that we looked at in the first video, where kindergarten students are identifying measurable attributes of an object. And in the proficient level, I wrote the word identify all the way there on the right, because that is the verb that's written in the standard, and that's what I want all of my students to be able to do, is identify these things. So after I selected my standard and wrote identify in the proficient level, I tried to get my standard in kid-friendly terms. So you'll notice that the kid-friendly terms I chose were point to things and talk about their attributes correctly.
Uh-oh, is that a word that kindergarteners would use, attributes?
You know, that's an interesting question. I wrestled whether or not to use the word attributes, but then I thought, well, the kids need to be familiar with the vocabulary in order to show that they have mastered the standard, so why not go ahead and introduce this vocabulary to them there?
That's a great point.
Would that be a suggestion that you would give to teachers, Courtney?
I certainly would, and that is actually, I'm assuming without unpacking every kindergarten standard, I'm sure that that is a vocabulary word that's new learning for this standard, so you would need to keep that into your teaching of this standard.
So it's a great way to learn the tier 2 words in the context of a particular standard.
Exactly.
Great.
All right, so as I was building this, I got my standard, I've got it in kid-friendly words, and everything that I did to begin with was on that proficient level. So I threw in the verb, identify, that goes with it, and then I tried to find as many activities as I could think of by asking students or searching around the internet or asking my colleagues, just a bunch of different activities that would help ensure that my students were able to identify attributes. So one, for example, on the bottom, I have put a link to some resources that students might be able to look at and to practice with about what is a long book.
So Lacy, when you were starting this, you went from writing down the standard, putting it in kid language, and then you immediately went to the standard level and focused on the activities for that.
Yeah, just activities that the kids would be able to do to show that they have mastered the standard. And so Courtney pointed out something very interesting that I wanted to share with you guys, is that I have a long list of activities here, and as the teacher, I would never expect for my kids to do all of these activities. It should be looked at as a brainstorm, as the teacher brainstorming what are different things that my kids could possibly do to match this standard. And that might allow for some student agency when we actually show these to our students. So after I had filled out some ideas in the proficient level and made sure that that was on standard, I went backwards. I went down to developing and then to emerging, and that was just a personal choice that I made to go down. You can approach this any way that you like, but I started to fill in the boxes for what might students do to show that they are developing and have almost met the standard, and then all the way down to the bottom, what students who have little or no background knowledge might need to do, what are some activities and maybe some assessments, some formative and probably summative assessments down here on the bottom, helping me and the students identify that they are emerging or developing. So after I was finished with the proficient level, I went down to developing, and I chose some activities that I thought might help the students develop their knowledge, and then down to the emerging level. And these are a list of activities that I've done in the past and things that I've asked my colleagues to help me with, much like you guys did for session 1.
So these activities that you put in emerging and developing are the activities that are going to give the kids the background knowledge and the scaffolding that they need to get to the standard level. So is that what you were thinking with these?
Yes, thank you so much. I was clearly having trouble with that.
What I notice on this is that the activities at each level, all you had to do was look at the level of blooms in order to figure out what to put at each level.
That is very true. And that was really helpful for me, because I knew that if I wanted my students to be retrieving information, it was easy for me to think of activities on the retrieval level. And if they had no background knowledge at all, and they were starting from the beginning, well, a logical place would be to work with the teacher or work with the basic vocabulary.
Exactly. So there's no place for something like a creation activity at that retrieval level. So that makes complete sense.
All right, so then big picture. This took me about an hour to complete. But the nice thing about me taking an hour to complete this is that we got a template out of it. And like I mentioned earlier, this is the assignment for you guys listening to our screencast for video 2. Kendra, can you walk them through what the assignment actually is?
I'd be glad to. So as Lacy pointed out, she made a template out of the work that she did on her learning plan for that kindergarten standard that we've talked about in video number 1. So this is what the template looks like. We have this shared with you on the site that we have, and I'm going to walk you through what you're doing. So if you look back to your assignment for task 1, you already chose a standard, and unless you want to try something else, you can take that same standard, paste it in on the top here where you see the blue bubble, and then you're going to turn that into kid-friendly terms. Remember how Lacy pointed out that she kept important vocabulary. You want to bring this down to the student's level, but you don't want to lose those important vocabulary words that are critical to them understanding what the standard means. After that, you can look at the column on the far left. Those words are all set. You shouldn't have to make any changes there because those are the levels that we're focusing on. The next column to the right is what the student will be doing. This can stay the same, or you can make it small changes once you get your activities in there. It's completely up to you how you do it.
So that section right there, Kendra, these are big picture ideas. And meaning we put these words in here to help guide you, but like Kendra mentioned, it's totally editable and you can make it fit to your particular standard or your classroom or how your students work.
Absolutely. So the big work portion of this is the activities that demonstrate mastery column. This is where you're going to put the brainstorm, like Lacy mentioned, of ideas that you could use with your students. And this is a great opportunity to ask kids what they would like to do, ask colleagues, use the internet, find different opportunities. Don't just do the things that you've done in the past, because this might be a great place to build student agency into your classroom. And once you've developed these learning progressions, it's already done for you. Finally, over on the right, this is where you're going to start at the proficient level with the Bloom's word that comes out of your standard, and then go from there.
All right, so let's wrap this up, everybody. What your specific task is to head on to the website and click the link that has the template. It will look like this. Go ahead and get it filled out using some of that feedback that you got from session 1 and pulling up some of your resources and just brainstorming. Get some activities in there and get this filled out. When you're finished, we want you to head back to your collaborative slide that you built in session 1. And on the very bottom, it says link to the learning plan I developed. Go ahead and highlight that at the top of your page. Click on the paperclip and link a view or keep going. Link a copy that allows other people to comment to your slide right here. And what we're going to ask you to do is have this linked. Go find some other people's slides that you've worked with and give them some feedback. So another link that is on our website is this feedback sentence starters. We are asking you to have your learning progression filled out, but also to help out other people. And we'd like for you to give 3 comments to any other person or people that are in this.
That have done the same activity. So you can use the positive and neutral ones. You can use the ways to help people can improve, however that looks for you. And I could give 3 pieces of advice or feedback to Lacy, or I could give 1 to Lacy, 1 to Courtney, and 1 to someone else. However you want to divide it out is fine.
And remember about these comments, when you give positive comments to people, that really helps them build their confidence. But when you give them critical comments and feedback, that really helps us develop better teachers. So don't shy away from the critical comments. None of them are mean. They're just things that they might do better. The way that you give somebody a comment is when you're in their learning progression, highlight the text, click the comment button at the top, and start typing in the box, and then click on comment. And that brings us to the end. We're all wrapped up here. We'll see you guys for our next session.
Thanks for listening.